When Stranger Things was first released in 2016, it introduced me to a whole new world of 80s movies, TV series and music. And to this day, this 80s aesthetic is very, very close to my heart. So I thought, why not pay homage to that Stranger Things style, that 80s vibe? And what better tools to use than some of the 80s most iconic artifacts? Polaroid cameras. I'm going to show you how to recreate the upside down, take Polaroids of mind-bending monsters and much more. So definitely stick around to the end of the video to see how to create the most 80s Polaroid. But let's get started with the first technique, low-light Polaroid photography. Rewatching a lot of 80s movies recently, I realized that a lot of the scenes take place at night. Be it in Close Encounters of the Third Kind or Back to the Future. I mean, Stranger Things even starts with a nighttime scene. But if you've ever worked with Polaroid cameras before, you know that low lighting conditions are quite hard to work in. So let me show you a few tips and tricks of how to do it without wasting a single Polaroid. Now, first you obviously need to find out if you need to use the low light techniques I'm going to show you, or if you're fine just using the camera handheld as always. To do that, I use an exposure meter app on my phone. But before you're able to use the app, make sure it's calibrated correctly. To do that, I first make sure that all the values like focal length, aperture and ISO are the same in the app as well as in my digital camera that I'm going to use for calibration. After that, I adjust the calibration value on the left here until the exposure time matches the value displayed in my digital camera. Now it's just a matter of holding the phone up to the scene I want to photograph, and the exposure time in the app will give me an indication if I can shoot handheld or not. Make sure that the aperture as well as the ISO is set to the values of your Polaroid camera. The app will then show you the exposure time. For everything longer than 1/100th of a second, I recommend you use a tripod. As I need to expose the image for about 3 seconds, I definitely need a way of securing my camera so it doesn't move while taking the photograph. To do that, I use this little board I can screw onto my tripod and then place the camera on top. While this solution is definitely not perfect, it is a solid way of mounting the camera onto a tripod without the need for any permanent alteration to the camera itself. Now it is just a matter of framing up the shot and pressing the shutter button. And even though we need an exposure time of around 3 seconds here, the image turned out tack sharp, without any blurring and perfectly exposed. But let's get going with our second technique, recreating the upside down using color masks. Now, some of the most iconic scenes in Stranger Things take place in the upside down. A place full of vines and monsters, a bluish hellscape with a red storm at the center. And that color scheme is exactly what we are going to recreate. All you need for this technique is some color gel and some scissors. Using the scissors, you are going to cut out a piece of gel. I put a download link in the description where you can get the stencil for free. Just make sure to print it at full size. Although this sort of colored gel is typically used to alter the color of movie lights, today we are going to use it to alter the color of our film. Now, after you've cut out your piece of gel, be sure to remove the protective coating on both sides, otherwise you might get very blurry Polaroids. After you've cut out your piece of gel, just mount it on your film pack. Now, though you see me pressing down on the film quite a lot, it is way better to just try to slide the gel under the film pack. That way you minimize the risk of getting light leaks onto your Polaroid film. Now it is just a matter of loading the film like you would with any other film pack into your Polaroid camera. Be aware that when shooting using this technique, the exposure is going to be a bit different than what you're used to. But don't worry, you can easily compensate using the exposure adjustment wheel on your camera. Now, if you don't want to shoot a whole film pack in one color, you can even prepare your film pack in a way that lets you change the transparency in the field. Just take the aforementioned film changing bag and use it to load the film pack, alternating between unexposed Polaroids and black cardboard. Let me explain that a bit more in detail. First, you don't want to load more than 3 unexposed Polaroids and 3 sheets of cardboard into your film pack. Otherwise, something might get stuck during the ejection, or worse, you might even damage your camera. At some point the battery of the film pack might run out, so definitely test that before loading your film. Speaking of loading your film, after you've prepared your film pack like shown on screen, just load it into the camera like any standard Polaroid film. The piece of cardboard will get ejected and you are ready to shoot your first Polaroid. After you've done that, you can now just remove the pack from your camera without wasting a single Polaroid. Now you're free to change the color of gel you want to use. By the way, this is also a great technique to change between color and black and white film, so definitely keep that in mind. So now you can take photographs that look like they came straight from the hellscape, but is the upside down. What would an alternate dimension be without its monsters? So with the next technique we are going to recreate one of Stranger Things' most iconic monsters, the Mind Flayer. This technique is very similar to the last one we looked at, although we do need to prepare a few more things, specifically the monster itself. To do that, I've printed the silhouette of the monster on some transparent film. The film I use here is typically used for old overhead projectors, so you should be able to get this in every office supply store. Now we just need to cut out the piece of film just like before and mount it onto the film pack, also just like before. To get the most out of this effect, I'm going to combine it with one of the colored masks we used earlier. And as with the mask earlier, the exposure is going to be a bit different. And also, as before, you could use the film changing bag or a darkroom to change out the motif. Speaking of motifs, you obviously don't need to use a monster. Other motifs like these also work just fine. I particularly like the bats and the upside down silhouette. Now, before we get to the final reveal, If you like this video so far, maybe consider liking or subscribing. Speaking of the final reveal, that's it. A whole pack of Polaroid film later, here are the pieces I produced today. And I think they turned out rather nicely. To be honest, I can't even decide on my favorite. But if you have a favorite Polaroid or technique that I showed in this video, let me know in the comments. Now, if you need some more Polaroid ideas, you can watch the playlist on screen now. And if you have any other questions, be sure to let me know in the comments. Until then, see you next video.